So what happens if a bonded party to a contract fails to perform under that contract? Here's a perfect example. A contracted surety principal who did not fulfill their obligation. This is a pretty big deal. This is a contract for $12 million for constructing a bridge in North Carolina. And as part of any major contract, most municipalities require a surety bond on the behalf of the construction company. And about halfway through this project, the construction company stopped working. They couldn't follow through. And according to the article, the contractor defaulted on this contract. The North Carolina Department of Transportation said it terminated its contract over several issues, including failure to resolve payment and failure to provide sufficient labor and equipment to fulfill the contract. And what happens is when that occurs, they complete about 55% and they were paid $7.1 million. The DOT requires contractors to have a bonding company in case the agency is forced to terminate the contractor's work. In this instance, the bonding company is now responsible for the project and no construction activity will occur until the new contract is hired. And this is how a construction surety bond works. There are three parties to that surety bond. There's the surety itself, which is the company, the insurance company that issues the bond. There's the obligee, who is the client. In this case, it was the North Carolina Department of Transportation. And the principal is the construction company. And the way a bond works is the obligee requires that the principal, the bidder of the contract, obtains the surety bond in order to be considered to be the winning bidder. Once the project is started, that surety bond goes in place to guarantee that the project will be finished. And the surety now has to step into the shoes of the principal and get that project finished by hiring another contractor, another company to finish it. But that's not the end of the story. The surety, the insurance company, will then take any losses they incur by having to pay to finish this project, and they will subrogate against the principal, meaning that just because you have a bond that you provided to your client doesn't mean you're off the hook if you don't follow through. The project gets finished, the client gets made whole by the surety, the new construction company will finish it, but then when all the dust is settled, that insurance company, that surety that provided the bond, will now go back to the principal and recover any losses from them. The reason for the surety bond is to make sure that there is deep pockets for the client to get their project finished, so they're not going to lose out. So if this contractor just walked away from this project after getting paid $7 million and didn't finish it, if the North Carolina DOT had to come out of pocket to finish it themselves and it cost them another $10 million or $15 million or whatever it is, then they would be out the difference between the original bid, which was $12 million, 12.3, and what they end up having to pay. So this makes sure that their budget is adhered to. The surety eats the difference, but then they go after the principal. They may never be able to collect from the principal. There may be no money to recover, no assets. They may go bankrupt, but the surety is taking on that risk, not the client, in this case, the government agency. So if you're a construction company, make sure you understand that if your client has to execute the surety, first of all, you're not off the hook. You may have liability to the surety. Plus, you may not be able to get another bond in the future. If you are an obligee, meaning that you're a recipient of these benefits, then a surety is going to make sure that your project will be completed to the specs of the original terms and conditions. Any surety bond issued from a licensed surety agency or licensed surety provider is going to cover all that, and they're going to have the financial resources to make sure your project gets finished, which is the reason why bid bonds or project bonds are very good. There's also another instance where this might come into play. If the project was completed, but it wasn't completed to spec, or there was some deficiency or defective construction, the surety will also cover that if it's written correctly. So be aware that construction bonds or surety bonds for construction projects are a benefit to all the parties, so that everybody knows that there is deep financial backing for all the commitments being made to ensure that, first of all, the principal gets paid, but second of all, that the obligee has a project that meets the terms and conditions of the original contract.